Hey, it's BAO, and this is Coffee with BAO. This is a series where I have coffee and chat with people who are doing very cool stuff in business, music, entertainment, pop culture, and more. Specifically, I like to focus on the topics of the creative process, cultural identity, and personal growth. Since this is one of our very first episodes, I'd really appreciate if you could send me any feedback on what's working and what could use some work. You can leave a comment or contact me at coffeewithbao.com. So let's meet our guest. Yay! Hi!
Hey.
Today I'm sitting down with, virtually, a fellow Asian American creative who's had some pretty interesting career changes. She's gone from scooping ice cream to working in a basement office to photographing weddings. In fact, she's the photographer of the last Ming and Ping album cover from 2019. We'll talk about that later. And now she is the published author of a new novel called The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes. Here's my friend and confidant of over 20 years, Elissa R. Sloan. Yeah!
Hey.
Hey, Elissa,
Hi.
thank you so much for being my guinea pig for this new series.
I'm so happy to be here.
Oh, thank you. Since this is Coffee with Bao, but I know you don't drink coffee, can you tell us what you have in your mug?
Just water. Gotta stay hydrated.
Awesome. And just to point out, it's a Houston Public Library mug. Very appropriate.
Represent.
Yeah, I totally approve of the water. It's the healthiest drink you can have. Cool. So you're dialing in right now from Austin, Texas. However, we met in Houston about 20 years ago. Wow.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was where you were born and raised. And you actually have a really interesting Asian American story. And I was wondering if you can tell folks how your parents decided that Houston would be the place to have kids, basically.
Well, my mom is from Japan and she met my dad in Minnesota when she was a foreign exchange student. And about 8 years later, they got married and they got married in New York. And my dad was fielding job offers at the time. And there were two opportunities for him in Salt Lake City and in Houston. And he knew that if they moved to Salt Lake City, that my sister and I, as yet unborn, would not look like anybody else who lived there.
Wow.
So he decided that Houston would be where we would grow up. And so it was very diverse, and my sister and I fit in perfectly fine.
Wow, that's crazy because before moving to Houston, I didn't have the perception that it would be a diverse place. In my mind, it was more of a homogenous place racially, culturally. But you're totally right. Houston is a very diverse metropolis. It was a really great place to grow up. Were there any like interesting things about growing up biculturally in between the two cultures?
Yeah, so back in the day, my sister and I would go to American school during the school year, and then we'd go to Japan during their school year in the summer, and then come home in August and recover from jet lag and then start American school all over again. And during the school year in America, we would also go to Japanese school on Saturdays. And so we were going to
Wow.
school all the time. But the cool thing about going to Japan in the summer, besides seeing family, was that we would see all these cool cultural things that happened in Japan first. So like Sailor Moon, we saw that
Yes.
first before anyone else in America. I knew about Pokemon before everyone else in America, and I had like a Pikachu shirt, and it was really like, I guess I wasn't very cool because no one knew who Pikachu was at the time.
You're
But
like too ahead of your time.
yeah, I was like, you'll figure it out. You'll see Pokemon. It'll come here. Because back in the day, like you didn't hear about these things, 5 minutes after it happened on Twitter. You would end up like it would take months for something to trickle over. And so
Yeah, you're right.
yeah.
Wow, such a trailblazer, accidental trailblazer. That's so awesome. What were some of like the were there any challenges to growing up as a, apparently Asian person in Texas?
Not as much as you would think. So maybe if we were in a smaller town where everyone was white, perhaps that would be an issue. But we were in Houston, where it was really diverse, and my sister and I didn't really have much of a problem with anything, other than being mistaken for Chinese, which happened to any Asian person.
This
Like
is
you all
true.
got lumped into being Chinese.
I see. Oh, that's cool. That's great. I think Houston is a really great place. Underrated, in my opinion. So I mentioned,
Houston is great.
really is. H-Town, what's up? I mentioned earlier you've had some pretty dramatic career changes. I know that in college you were scooping ice cream at a retail ice cream shop, and then you spent a long time in an office job before, while you were working on your photography business as well. Can you kind of talk about some of the work that you had to put in order to make the transition from an office job to full-time photography?
Sure. So I graduated from college in 2008 during the recession, and the job that I was able to find was a really small entry level job at the state of Texas, and it was a state agency, and it was in a basement with fluorescent lighting, and there was no natural lighting at all, and
Perfect.
it was horrible. Um, but it did have benefits, so I can't knock it too much. And it
Yeah,
paid
totally.
for our wedding. So, I mean, we had a small wedding, nothing outlandish, but it paid for our wedding. So, I was working there for about a year before I got married, and that's when I realized that wedding photography was not the really stodgy, old, boring stuff that you used to see in like Father of the Bride movies and
Mm-hmm.
stuff like that. It's actually much more dynamic and beautiful, like artistic, and you can actually make it something creative and wonderful. And so I decided that I was going to start a wedding photography business. And I started my business in 2010, having already done the foundations of photography back in high school with you, if you remember.
Yeah.
Um,
HSPVA, we've
yeah,
got a shout out to HSPVA.
HSPVA, woo! Um, And from then on, I was working weekends, shooting weddings, and working in the daytime at my day job, and blogging at night, and hustling, and just
Jeez, man.
basically working really, really hard for 2 years after that. So I was able
Um,
to quit my day job in 2012.
so you said there were 2 years in which you were working both jobs just like constantly?
Yes.
Jeez. Wow. It really paid off because I think that your wedding photography business really made a splash and an impact on a lot of people. Um, I thought that your approach to wedding photography, was something that I overlooked because you're constantly trying to inject more artistic things into the work rather than just like showing people standing around with each other in their fancy garb. So totally, that photography kind of elevated my opinion of wedding photography a lot.
Oh, thank you.
Um, so after about 20 years of not collaborating, we finally we finally were able to work on the Ming and Ping album cover together last year, and I'll show an image of that later. But like, I really appreciate you kind of going out of photo retirement to help me do that project, and it was really it opened my eyes to how insanely hard and how much talent you actually have to pull that off. Okay,
Thanks. I had a lot of practice though. It was
you really did. Let's
years
talk about
of
that a little
listening.
later. Now in 2020, you've got this brand new novel. Like, you're a published novelist, which is amazing. Your book is called The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes. It came out last September. Can you give us an elevator pitch of the book?
Yeah. So In 2002, Gloss, the group, was one of the biggest pop phenomenons in the world, and they implode suddenly when Cassidy, one of the members, leaves without warning and without explanation. 15 years later, she dies by suicide. And so the book is an examination of what happened back in the day when they were together and when the group formed, and the lead up to the funeral in the present, and what went wrong within the group, and also why did she kill herself.
Wow, that's a lot of stuff to pack into a novel.
Yeah, it is.
I'm going to show the audience an image of your book cover. I'll be right back. Here's a photo of Elissa's new novel, The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes. The author's name is Elissa R. Sloan. The book is published by William Morrow, which is an imprint of HarperCollins, which means you can find it everywhere books are sold. It's been getting really great reviews. You can't miss the cover art. And search for The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes wherever you buy paper books, ebooks, or audiobooks. And I have heard a rumor that you're super into the audiobook.
I love the audiobook. So they asked me for my opinion on all the different voices, and so I got to choose the voice actors for the audiobook, and there's 7 different voices because there's 4 main points of view and then 3 smaller points of view, and they all get their own distinct voice, and I just love it. It's great.
That must be so cool to see your work that was released in one sort of medium and then seeing it transformed into a different medium.
Yeah, it is really cool. I did not expect to get an audiobook, and so when
Awesome.
when I did not expect to get any consultation on the audiobook. I didn't know anything about. I mean, this is my first time like dealing with an imprint, so I was just like, okay, well, whatever happens, happens, and I was really glad that I was able to give my input on things.
That's really great. I'm excited to, I'm going to listen to it actually because I usually like to consume stories while I'm cooking or doing some other stuff. Um, so
Fair.
I, to be honest, I am about 75 pages into your book, which is, I don't know, not a lot, like 1/5 maybe. Um, what I've been fascinated by is your ability to weave in so many different characters' perspectives, so many different time periods, and even different methods of communication, like news clippings and messages to each other. Weaving all of those things into one big narrative that you can emotionally grasp onto, it must have been totally a crazy process for you to do. I'm wondering why you chose to and how you did that.
Well, it kind of came naturally to me because I knew that I wanted to have 4 main perspectives of these 4 girls, or 4 women, each member of the group Gloss, to tell their own individual stories of what happened during those turbulent years when they were all together. And and it just, I don't know, I just, it was organic. It happened naturally. I was like, oh,
Huh.
okay, I'm gonna write it this way.
That's crazy. Had you been influenced by some other works that took that approach of like knitting a bunch of separate things together?
I read so many books while I was writing this book because it took
Uh-huh.
5 years to write this book that I think I took a little bit from every book that I've read. I think I read over 250 books during that time.
Wow. 5 years is no joke. That's such a long time to work on one project. I know that it's like a compulsion or an obsession that you need to get out. Like for me, when I work on an album specifically, like a collection of songs, it feels like I'm incubating some sort of creature inside me and that I like have to let it out, that it's growing. I'm wondering what your like driving force behind writing the book was. Like, how did you feel about it?
It was like a nagging feeling, like I was being possessed by the characters and that I needed to tell their stories. And it was really annoying because, I would get frustrated with the process and I would set aside the work in progress and I would be like, I'm not going to work on this anymore. It's horrible. I hate this process and I don't want to do it anymore. And I
Yeah.
would leave it for like, half a year. And then this nagging feeling would keep coming back to me, like, you're not done writing this character's story arc yet, so you need to keep going. And I would have to pick it back up and keep going.
Wow, that's so crazy. So literally, you were haunted by these characters, like
Yes,
possessed.
I was. I
That's
think that's
nuts.
not unusual for a lot of authors, though. Like I hear stories about authors who are like possessed or nagged by their characters in their heads, and they have to finish writing the story, otherwise they get no peace.
Wow, that's crazy. Um, for me, when I'm working on a record, I feel like getting that record out is like vomiting a rainbow, kind of. It's painful, it's terrifying, it's complicated, but like it's beautiful at the same time. It needs to exist. Um, do you remember any of the terrifying or euphoric feelings during the process of writing the book?
Oh gosh, I had this really bad, many times it's happened, but I had a really bad moment where I was looking at the 5 years of work that I'd done, and I had rewritten it so many times, and I was just looking at it like, this is awful. It's trash. I just want it to not exist anymore. Um, and it was like my lowest point with this book. And um, amusingly, like maybe 3 months later, I got a book deal from this book. so, so
What?
obviously it was not trash, but yeah, it was just that feeling like maybe you have that feeling too, where you're like, I've spent so long on this project and it doesn't feel like it is where it should be, and you just are so frustrated with it. Yeah, that was a
Uh,
bad time.
Do you, now looking back, do you feel like that was a figment of your imagination, like your insecurities?
Yeah, I think I was having a creative temper tantrum that day, and um, I just really needed to like work out, and I had to go see an author speak that day. I saw Angie Thomas talk, and I was just like, oh, okay, she reinvigorated me. She was like, you can't be scared of the blank page. Um, and I think the quote that she gave was, fear is not a god. So you can't fear
Wow,
the blank page. Yeah. And so I was like, she knows what she's saying.
that's
like
awesome.
she knows what she's doing.
Super
Yeah.
inspiring. That's so cool. And now you're speaking about your book in public too, which is I've never known you to like flock toward the spotlight. You're a pretty private person. However, I've
Yeah.
joined a few of your events and I've been really impressed that about your openness in talking about some of the mental struggles that you've had while writing the book. What do you think the biggest mental health struggle you had to overcome between like writing and getting it published?
Well, I was writing and rewriting about Cassidy's depression in this book, and I did not realize that it was depression at the time. I was undiagnosed and I had not talked to anybody. Um, and I just thought I was having like a bad week slash month slash year slash couple of years. Um,
Yeah.
I was writing this depression arc out, and I was like, man, this is really not healthy. Like something is actually wrong with me. And so as soon as I finished the draft of the book, I went and got a therapist, and I'm doing a lot better now that I have a therapist and medication. so
Wow.
um yeah.
That's the real deal, man. That's like, I'm super appreciative that you've been sharing that story because a lot of people feel like it's not spoken about enough to hear the nuances of the different perspectives, So it's a valuable thing that you've been sharing your story.
Well, thanks. It's I like to think that by sharing my story, someone else will maybe recognize themselves as well and be like, oh wow, so it's not just a really bad funk, it's something that can be treated,
Yeah,
and go seek help. And yeah, so I hope that inspires somebody.
that's great. I wrote online a few days ago that, or maybe it was video, but you have such a more profound connection to somebody's work when you kind of see them as a human being and see their nuances as a person. So I think
Mhm.
for you to also back up your book with these appearances has been super effective and really appreciated. Let's show that book again. Elissa's book, Elissa R. Sloan, her new novel is called The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes, and it's available wherever you buy paper books, ebooks, or audiobooks. Thank you so much, Elissa. So now you've got a few new ideas that you've been messing around with, and I won't ask you to share them. But in terms of process, has there been anything different about the process now that you're like working on a follow-up?
Well, I'm going to tell you what I learned and what I should be using as my template now, and then I'm going to tell you the truth. So, um, the illusion is that I learned a lot from my first book, and I learned how to make a writing habit and write even though I don't feel quote unquote like it. And you have to write something in order to edit it, so you can't edit a blank page. And so you just need to write no matter what, is basically what I'm trying to say. And I wish that I was doing that, but I'm not. I'm kind of stuck where I am right now, trying to figure out what to do next. And I want to berate myself about it, but at the same time, we are in a pandemic, and so I feel like it's natural to be kind of stuck right now. So I'm just gonna give myself some grace.
Yeah, totally earned it.
Thanks.
So, I mean, the process now, is there more pressure to turn in things on time now for you?
There's people waiting for me to give them something. So I have an agent now. I have an editor who's interested in my next project, although it's not contracted. So I'm not on a deadline. But even though I don't have a contract for the next book, I do feel like people are waiting to see what I have next. Like I have the expectation of readers, the expectation of my team. So I do feel a little bit of pressure.
Have there been new tactics that you've been trying out to try to combat this feeling of not being able to start on something new?
Yeah, I've been brainstorming a lot, and I have this little tool called the Alpha Smart, and it's a keyboard that is made for children, I believe, learning how to type, and there's only 4 lines of keystrokes that are visible on the screen, and it's very cheap and portable, and like journalists use it on the go, and it's really great for brainstorming because you can just free write and see if anything pops up. I know some authors use it to actually draft their books, and they do it so they can get as many words down as possible in a certain amount of time. But I think it works better for me to brainstorm, so that's what I'm using it for.
Whoa, that's super interesting. So the point is that you're not nitpicking what you've written, right? The point is just to get you to put it out there?
Yes.
Wow,
Yeah,
that's
just
so
to keep
cool.
writing and to make progress.
Yeah, I think the songwriting equivalent of that would be just to freestyle into a recording and then go back later and pick out what sounds good, and use that stuff. That's really interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, so finally, after 20 years of not ever collaborating, we were able to work together on the album cover photos for Ming and Ping's last record, Los Angeles, November 2019. And I'm going to show those images right now. So on the left, you'll see Los Angeles, November 2019. And then on the right, there's an instrumental version of that. We took a few really great photos around downtown Los Angeles. And that gave me a chance to see some of your process, Elissa, and realize how well planned and methodical and talented you've got to be to pull something off that's so big and complicated. For example, you have basically a 3D model of those sets in your brain, and down to the angle and placement of the lighting before we even set foot on the set. which was super impressive to me and like a whole new dimension of thinking that I was like blown away by. The reason I bring that up is that shows in your book as well, like, you know, your ability to grab all of these perspectives and time periods and a bunch of stuff and turn it into something that people can emotionally grasp onto. It's super cool. Okay, that's a long setup, but my question is, do you have any tips for people like me who don't have as much practice or skill assembling such a wide variety of elements into one big thing?
Well, you're going to hate this answer, but I'm going to have to say you have to practice and practice and practice some more. So I have like a lot of practice doing really quick setups. You know, we were trying to shoot the album cover images like in really fast and quick and dirty, just get it done. And I do the same thing on wedding days where I'm like, you know, this is a wedding, it's not a photo shoot. I'm not going to keep you from your wedding guests and family and everybody for hours taking photos of you.
Yeah.
I'm going to ask for 20 minutes of your time and we're going to shoot, and then you're going to go hang out with everybody else that you want to hang out with, and you're not going to spend time with me. And I think that gave me the practice to really get like really fast and really good at seeing light and messing around with light and giving a variety of poses and looks, I guess you could say.
Right. That's crazy because, you know, when I was working with you on that shoot, I felt like you were definitely like an athlete, that you had practiced and everything was like muscle memory. Oh, by the way, I want to shout out to everyone who helped us do that shoot. You guys really helped and to make it happen. But like I said,
you guys were great.
You definitely had the muscle memory, which was super impressive because we were super time limited to make that shoot happen. And yeah, it was just really impressive. Are there skills, or is there one big skill, life skill or work skill that you're trying to level up on right now?
Yeah, I'm trying to make it a habit to write anything every day, just because I have gotten out of the habit. When I was editing the book with my editor, I stopped writing something new. And so I got out of the habit of writing and I was just reactive to what she wanted me to work on. And right now I have to be proactive about creating something new. So trying to get better.
I see. Yeah, the consistency and the practice, there's definitely, you know, a lot of tactics that people recommend, and I guess it's about trying out and see what works for you. But like you said, encouragement from other people goes a long way.
It's true.
That's great. So, Elissa, do you have any closing thoughts you want to leave the audience with?
You know, if you have something on your mind and you want to start creating it, like the best time to do it is now. Well, the best time to do it was yesterday, but you can't go back to yesterday. So start working on it now. You know, I didn't think that I would become a published author, and I have a book deal. So, hey, you know,
That's awesome.
I just started working on a book and it became something, and now people can read it and it's really cool. So I would say don't limit yourself and actually work on the thing that you're thinking about working on. Just like steal a little time from your day every day and just chisel away at it a little bit, and hopefully it'll become something.
That's really great advice. Thank you.
You're welcome.
So cool. I thank you. That was Elissa R. Sloan. She's still here. That is Elissa R. Sloan with her new novel, The Unraveling of Cassidy Holmes. You can find Elissa on her website or at elissarsloan.com. And Elissa, can you hang on the line while I give a little outro, and then I'll come back and give you a proper goodbye?
Of course.
Awesome. Thank you. Guys, thank you so much for joining us for Coffee with BAO. If you want to support the show, you can leave a comment. Since this is an early episode, you can leave us some feedback too, if that's possible. If you can financially support me in creating all of this content, please buy me a coffee at coffeewithbao.com. And Elissa and I thank you so much for having coffee with Bao. We'll see you later.